Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about viruses. We were exposed to a pandemic recently where we had a lot of contact with viruses. Um, so, um, uh, a lot of times we had to have some education about this. Everybody was told basically that they should avoid large crowds. They should wear a face mask to protect them. Um, and we were able to also get some vaccinations. With all of that, we were able to get through the pandemic. Um, but we come into contact with viruses every day. The most common virus that we come in contact with is the common cold. And it's not uncommon that you come in contact with people who don't even know they're sick. And by your contact, you wind up getting a cold. Uh, you know, uh, in some cases, people not realizing what happened come up with some kind of goofy ideas about what to do to prevent the next cold. So they'll wear a hat all the time because they figure that they got their head cold, and that's why they got a cold, or they will figure that they got a chill right before the cold, so it must have been that they didn't wear the proper clothing when they were outside, and that's why they caught the cold. Um, to look at this, the Army did an experiment with recruits. They took recruits and they put them in a freezer, um, and lowered their temperature on the outside of their body, and then saw what happened, and they found that for the most part, nobody got a cold. Uh, so it wasn't cold that caused the cold. Then they put the recruits in a warm room and they put cold virus in their noses, and pretty much everybody came down with the common cold. Um, uh, so that was test number two, cold viruses in a warm room. And of course, just for completeness, they put the cold virus for people with a cold room, and of course, they all caught the cold. So what they basically were able to show was that warmth or cold was really not the cause of the common cold, but it was the cold virus that caused the cold. Um, that's really the same with all the viruses, whether it be the common cold, the flu, or the COVID virus that caused the pandemic. You come in contact with the virus, your immune system tries to take care of it, and if it can't, then you catch the infection. Now, vaccines are helpful for this. The vaccines can help to blunt the effect of the viruses. So, by taking the COVID vaccine, you will either not get sick when you catch the virus, or if you do, you get a minimal infection, something that's not so harmful. Uh, they were talking about some person, probably a politician, who caught the COVID virus 3 times in 1 year. More than likely, that's because he was tested a lot. And so he probably didn't even know he was sick if he got that many COVID viruses. Um, uh, but for people in the public eye, they sometimes will do testing on a regular basis, and that's probably how they found out that he was infected with the virus. I doubt that he was sick 3 times that year. Um, uh, the vaccines definitely are helpful. Now, the other thing, because that we found is wearing masks is helpful. Uh, Most of these viruses are spread through the air, and so by wearing a face mask, it's helpful. Of course, it depends on the situation. Um, uh, If you're going into certain healthcare situations, they're probably going to make you wear a mask because we know that the odds of coming in contact with a virus in a healthcare situation is much higher than coming in contact with a virus at the grocery store. So wearing a mask is helpful. Um, uh, Also, I wanted to let you know when you get a common cold and you got a runny nose, maybe a temperature change, maybe a little bit of a cough. Um, uh, all of these things are uh, uh, are uh, are talked about with the common cold. But did you know that none of those things have to do with the virus? All of those things are actually our body's immune response to the cold. Um, we cough to get the stuff out of our lungs. So if you have virus that goes into your lungs, you cough and try to expel that virus. If you have a runny nose, that's not the virus. That's actually our immune system pouring chemicals on the virus to kill it. The fever, again, when we fight viruses, one of the tricks that we have is raising the temperature. Most viruses need to have the temperature nice and controlled. When we raise our body temperature, it tends to kill most of the viruses. So a fever is actually our attempt to kill the virus. For that reason, some of these things don't necessarily have to be controlled unless you're uncomfortable with them. Now, if you have a fever that's so high that you're uncomfortable, taking a little bit of Tylenol to bring the temperature down is a good idea. But don't forget, that's part of our defense against these viruses. The same thing with coughing. If your cough is not a horrible cough, you might want to just let the cough happen so that you can get over the cold faster. Now the body aches that you have, some of that may be from the virus, but a lot of that also is our immune system. When we fight viruses, we put out, antibodies that will knock out the viruses. Those antibodies kind of clog up the system, so it causes our muscles to ache, our joints to ache. When we're seeing some of these symptoms, it's not the virus, it's us. When we try to fight viruses, we do things that sometimes cause a little bit of discomfort to the body, but it's important for the body to fight these things. There are really no good antivirals for colds and the flu. Some of them can shorten the course, but they can't necessarily eliminate the virus. Some of the times you take the antivirus for the flu, and instead of getting a flu that lasts for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe it lasts 1 to 1.5 weeks. You haven't killed the virus, you just kind of minimized it, but you still have plenty of virus around for the immune system to fight off. Okay, so this is some talk about viruses and why we have the symptoms that we do with the viruses.